Have you ever wanted to break away from basic chord structure and add some complexity to your playing, but you just don't know how? It's not as hard as you think. Let's take a basic idea and just add a little bit of soul on top of it. Let's hang out in the key of A minor today because there's no sharps or flats and it's real beginner friendly. If I told you to play a basic 4-chord progression, A minor, G major, F major, and E minor, right out of the gate you would probably do. While that still sounds musical, there's a lot that we could do with this, you know what I mean? Just keeping this going. But how do I add to this? You know, it's just not very exciting. I think the best place to start would be adding what's called 7th chords. Now, if you've studied music at all, then you know that scales have 8 notes in them, correct? And that would be from the root note to the octave, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Up and down, right? When you hear these terms of like 7th chords, oh no, what does that mean? It just means taking the 7th note of the chord that you're playing and adding it, right? Because as I'm sure most of us know, when you're playing a chord, you have 3 notes. That's called a triad, right? Very simple stuff, right? And that's where we're starting our progression now. What is the triad? Well, it's 1, 3, 5. So, for example, in A, if we're doing A minor, the first note is A, the 3rd note is C, and the 5th note is E. So, making an A minor triad would literally just be A, C, E, 1, 3, 5. We can add G, which is the 7th note, on top of that chord. And all of a sudden it has more depth to it than... And you're just going to add this to each of the chords you're playing. Now, the only thing you need to understand is to respect the key signature that you're in. As I said with A minor, there are no sharps or flats. So that means when we're adding 7ths to all these other chords, 1, 3, 5, 7, there's our first one, A minor 7. But to go to G, if we were to do a G major 7, we would need to add this F sharp, right? We can't do that because there is no F sharp in the key of A, right? So all we have to do is lower that 7 to fit the key. This is called a dominant 7. Wait a minute, that's starting to sound bluesy, right? So now... Whoa, wait a minute. So now we have an A minor 7, a G dominant 7. Ooh, so much better. But then wait a second, we're playing an F major. Wouldn't we be playing an F major 7? And we can. It's totally, we could totally do. That works. That sounds so musical, man. Look at it. But what if I wanted to touch it to be a bit more bluesy? Well, you see, there exists this thing called a blue note. Without going too off the rails here, we have the first 5 notes of our A minor scale, right? That's an A minor pentatonic scale, which is beautiful. You know what I mean? Great stuff to have. Beautiful. I could do that all day and we get music out of it. But what we could do instead of these 5 notes, we could do these 5 notes. Whoa. But there are no sharps or flats in A minor. Well, that's the thing about doing these type of blue notes. It's used in blues most commonly. It's even called the blues pentatonic scale, right? You can even just do a little groove with that. the thing is, it's instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going 1, 3, 4, raised 4, and then 5. I'm not going to confuse you with why and going into theory and all that. Just know, if you want to start adding that bluesy sound to it, you just add that blue note. See, it sounds so harsh. It sounds so harsh when you hear it. The thing about music is you can't be afraid of this tension here, because resolve. That's where we're leading to. You build tension to resolve it, because this note wants to go here. Right? So, we can use this blue note wherever we like and still be in the key signature, but it's gonna do some things to music, right? So if I'm doing more of a bluesy, kind of jazzy, soulful sound, this isn't jazz, there's just so much more into that, but if I'm just doing a light little, rather than just, we can start doing some stuff. So as I said, we're gonna respect the key signature with A minor 7, G dominant 7, and then instead of F major 7, which would have been this, we'll do an F dominant 7, because the lowered 7 is that blue note, right? So now we have our progression sounding like this. Ooh, wait a second. That tritone doesn't sound so ugly anymore, does it? Because then, when we get to the last E minor, I can resolve it from here to here. But even more so, there's a second blue note, believe it or not. Right? It's the 7. So instead of doing this A minor 7, which is this right here, when I get to the final note, instead of doing E minor, I'm going to do E dominant 7. But we're still in A. So if we look at the blues scale, that's the full scale right there. 2 blue notes. Tritones. I know it's a little confusing. We're going to backpedal real quick. So as I said, we originally have A minor, G major, F major, E minor. That would be the normal key signature, and we could still do a lot with that. Like if I took the A minor scale and just started A minor 7, G dominant 7, F major 7, E minor 7. All of that would work, but we're gonna add a little bit of soul to it. That's the whole purpose of what we're doing here today, right? So I can go A minor 7, G dominant 7, F dominant 7 because it's got that blue note, and then E dominant 7, which has the second blue note. And now all of a sudden that progression has so much more life to it, right? So here's the original. Right? Still sounds good. But what if, instead, we did A minor 7, G dominant 7, F dominant 7, and E dominant 7? Right? Now all of a sudden there's some life to it. And all we did was take these 2 blue notes, that scale in its entirety from in A minor, or any scale really, it's 1, 3, 4, raised 4, 5, 7, raise 7, octave. And we can do the same thing in any key. So if I were to go to C minor, 1, 3, 4, raised 4, 5, 7, raised 7, there it is. Right? Taking this progression that we've been working on, now we can add some flair to it, right? But I want to solo over it. So, all right, what do I do when I'm soloing over this progression? If you do music, then obviously you know. You just play the scale to solo, right? You just mix it up. You find what you like. You know what I mean? You find the notes that are in the chord you're playing. Which sounds great and all, but what if we added those blue notes into this progression? So the only 2 notes I'm going to play that aren't in the key are a raised 4 and a raised 7. And then I'm really going to use those notes to just resolve into the notes they're supposed to be. So from here to here, right? Just like that. Not at the same time. So I'm going to take this progression and do the bass in my left hand. And instead of this, I'm going to do this. So to summarize the whole point of this, if you want to add a little more bluesy, jazzy flair into your playing without getting too crazy, you're just going to add 2 blue notes. That's it, right? That's it, man. Honestly, stick to the first 5 notes of a blues scale and just mix it up till you find something you like. Real simple. You don't need to get crazy. Just experiment and get used to that. Next thing you know, you'll be jamming like a pro and you'll just hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. Woman, oh woman, you treat me so mean. You're the meanest old woman I'd ever seen. I guess if you say so, I'll pack my things and go. Oh, just hit the road. Hit that follow button, leave a like, and I will see you next time.